State law says no e-bikes. The land manager says no e-bikes. The trailhead signs say no e-bikes. Yet everywhere you ride there are e-bikes. What are you going to do about it? Here's our guide on how to talk to an e-biker. So first of all, some context. Remember the days when we'd be just riding along and the hikers would give us grief for being dangerous, destroying the trails, and riding where we just didn't belong? Yeah, and that was on trails where mountain bikes were actually permitted. In any case, the hiker approach didn't work with us. It just created ill will all around. So rule number one with e-bikers is to go into any conversation with a non-threatening mindset. Be polite, be courteous, be non-defensive, and listen to what they have to say. Now, usually an encounter begins at a trailhead or summit where bikes gather and riders are taking a break. And someone notices an e-bike and they start talking about the e-bikes. That's your opening. But how do you say, hey, you're really not allowed here, without starting an argument? Here's the key. You ask questions. You start by asking if they're aware that e-bikes are not permitted on these trails. Actually, I usually open by saying, I'm not an e-bike hater, and I'm not trying to start an argument, but I'm just wondering if you're aware that e-bikes are not allowed. In just about all cases I've found, they claim they aren't. They try to justify their presence. Some will say they didn't see any indication e-bikes were banned, this despite prominent signage, etc., etc. Others will claim that they have permission despite the signage, that the policy has been altered or updated, or other exceptions have been made. One e-biker told me on the summit of Tiger Mountain that the state had issued an update stating that e-bikes were permitted on all state public lands. Now, I knew this to be wrong, but I couldn't prove it because my cell phone couldn't get a signal.
I'm going to get right to the point. It's come to my attention that you and the cleaning woman have engaged in sexual intercourse on the desk in your office. Is that correct? Was that wrong? Should I not have done that?
So after the ride, I downloaded the actual policy, which is that e-bikes are permitted only where explicitly posted and subject to land manager approval. And now I have that screenshot stored on my phone for easy reference. But I didn't argue the point. I think the e-biker got the message. I also have pointed out to e-bikers signage clearly stating no motorized vehicles allowed. One e-biker responded that e-bikes are not considered motorized vehicles. Now that's a tough one since the definition of a motor is pretty darn clear. Again though, I just asked, if your e-bike doesn't have a motor, what do you consider the device powering it to be called? And that's with a curious and polite, not snarky tone. Another time I encountered a group of e-bikers riding a still under construction trail, so you got a double whammy. Not only was the whole trail network closed to e-bikes, that specific trail wasn't even open to the public yet. They claim they had special dispensation from the lead trail builder to ride there. When I followed up with the trail builder, I did get some fuzziness, so they may have been right. Which brings us to the main point about e-bikes. They pretty much seem inevitable. There's too much big money behind their sales, too much public acceptance at this point, and too much official tolerance. And on the bright side, they are expanding the population of bikes on trails, so there is that. Plus, enforcement is non-existent, and the current attitude seems to be don't ask, don't tell. But I think it's useful to ask even if you don't tell. E-bikers need to be politely reminded that they're breaking the rules for several reasons. First, I really believe courteous pushback will help keep them from riding irresponsibly on the trails. E-bikes go too fast in a lot of situations on trails that aren't made for their speed. They're particularly dangerous on switchbacks and trails with poor sight lines. I suffered a serious injury colliding with an e-bike which was rounding a blind switchback going way faster uphill than a normal bike could go and than I was expecting a bike to go. One can even imagine a fatal situation under the wrong circumstances. Second, e-bikes risk alienating other user groups, causing them to oppose all bikes on trails. The mountain biking community has worked way too hard for way too long building alliances with these groups for it all to go down the drain now. Finally, e-bikes do indeed cause serious trail damage. E-bikers need to join work parties and learn how trail sustainability works. When I ask e-bikers if they understand how much worse a 50-pound bike with a motorized acceleration is for any given trail, they usually express surprise. That lack of awareness needs to change. Ultimately, what needs to happen is for e-bikes to get recognized as a legitimate member of the trail community, approved on select multi-purpose trails, and for new trails to be built with e-bikes in mind. I can even see a case for e-bike only trails under the right circumstances. E-bikes are here to stay. We just need to accommodate them in ways that don't jeopardize our safety and trail sustainability. Till it happens, you can bet I'll be piping up politely if I see you riding an e-bike out on the trail.